Today's guest is Stephan, who is a French born Dallas restaurateur and the founder of Travis Street Hospitality. Stephan, thanks so much for joining the Opening Soon podcast.
My pleasure, Alan. Thank you for having me.
All right. So before we dive into Travis Street Hospitality, I'd love to go back to when you first arrived in America and you started off as a dishwasher. Talk to
Yes.
me about that journey.
I think a lot of people did, right? Arriving to America, this or another low scale job. I moved to New York from Paris back in 1987. I was 21 years old and having a nice life in Paris, in many ways, because it's a beautiful place. But I was not motivated by what I was doing at the time, which was law school. I went to law
Hmm.
school. I was also doing some acting school and, really trying to find a path that would emulate me. And I'd never been to the States. But I had like many French people, I mean, many people in the world. I mean, it's not, it goes behind France or anywhere else. I had a very strong desire and attraction, towards the United States, and I
Yeah.
decided, kind of on a whim with a friend of mine that I met in acting school, and we came together, not really knowing what was there for us.
Okay. So did you drop out of law school or did you drop out of
Yeah,
acting school to come
I,
to the
I,
US?
I dropped out of everything.
Okay.
Yes, yes, I
So,
came, I came really with no real expectations, very little money, not speaking English at the time. And therefore, very difficult to find a job. And that's why I was lucky enough to find one, but it was a dishwasher job because I knew very little.
so you knew you wanted to be in the US, but you didn't know
Yes,
what you were going to do. And then you just
absolutely.
bought what was it, a plane ticket or a boat ticket to the
So
US?
actually, a friend of mine got me a free ticket. I don't know how. He
Okay.
had a connection with the late TWA, and it started very well because I got bumped into business class. So it was really like it was amazing, you know.
Wow.
I had $500 in my pocket, but I was in business class. Yeah, that was first time of my life, obviously. And yeah, I mean, I just knew, and I didn't think I was going to stay that long. I had a 6 month tourist visa,
I
and
see.
I really felt that I thought I was going to, be there for about 6 months and probably travel to Central America, Mexico. I mean, I just wanted to
Oh.
go around. Yeah,
So it was more of I want to come visit the US. It wasn't I want to stay here for the next 40 years to build my career.
correct. I didn't know what I wanted. I
Got
I,
it.
I knew that I knew that I needed to, you know, bite into life, and obviously you go to the Big Apple. It makes a lot of sense, and I knew I needed some more experience, and I need to be exposed to a different culture,
Sure.
even though I had been when I was young, with my family history and some travel as well. I needed more, and I
Yeah.
knew that New York could be the right place for me at
Okay.
the time.
Great. So tell me how you got this dishwashing job, how you got exposed to the restaurant industry, and what did you think of it?
So I had worked in restaurants as a student back in Paris, to
Okay.
make some money to, just go out and enjoy like the side life, besides being a student. So I had an experience in that, not a big one, and I was not particularly attracted by it. But I like to go to restaurant myself, obviously, like
Sure.
all of us. And being French, you kind of it's part of who you are, because obviously France is big in terms of culinary world, but also people go to restaurant, go to cafe, so it's part of their life. And so my friend and I moved to New York. He came a couple of weeks before me, so he found an apartment in the West Village, and a small railway apartment with no doors.
Hmm.
But I remember, getting there. It was like Indian summer, and I put my bags down. And what was funny actually was on Jones Street, and I knew the street because doing acting school. I was fond of reading biographies of different actors. I knew that Kirk Douglas had lived there when himself moved to Manhattan.
Okay.
But in the cab taking me from JFK, I said John Street. And John Street is a different street. It's not John Street, to tell you
Mm,
my, I still have a strong accent,
yeah.
but at the time I didn't know where to place it. So he takes me down that alley, which at the time was kind of sketchy. It was off Lafayette Street, but, behind, what used to be Time Cafe at the time. I think it's Lafayette Bakery now.
Okay.
But the alley, today Manhattan is so posh, right, everywhere. But at the time he wasn't. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm not sure it's there. And then I show him the address, and he's like, oh, Jones Street, like we don't. And I was like, right. And then it drives me to that other place, and I'm at the corner of Bleecker, or actually, it was, no, West Fourth and Jones Street, and I put my bags down. I got to tell you, and right there, right then, I knew it was a place for me. I fell in
Wow.
love with New York instantly. It was a beautiful day. I don't know. I saw the people walking back and forth. I was blown away. I was like in a movie,
Yeah.
and I knew right away that it was a great place. What's funny is because of the little detour, my friend, realized that I was late, and he had just come down and left a note on the door to tell me where to meet him. And but fortunately, he was right there because I had my two bags and everything, so I didn't have to hop wherever he was telling me to meet him. But he was telling me to meet him. And after we dropped my bags upstairs, we went to that place that was called the Figaro Cafe. And it was great because the village at the time, it has changed a lot, but the Figaro Cafe was on Bleecker. I don't think it exists anymore. Maybe it does, but it was part of those old Italo-American cafe,
Hmm.
that part of the tradition in the village. And it was very similar to what we have in France. And we went there, we sat outside, had a coffee. It was amazing. And it's there that we met a really fine young guy. His name was Kenny because his real name was something else. I forgot, but he was originally from Kenya. So
Okay.
he would a tall, flamboyant Kenyan, super nice. And when he heard that we were French, he jumped on us, and he was really like I don't know, a character of the neighborhood. Knew everyone left and right, very. And
Sure.
he's the one that got me to get a job as a dishwasher busboy at another cafe. There
Mm,
was also the Italian American cafe that was this time on Prince Street, right off West Broadway. It was called Cafe Borgia 2 because they had a first one and that there was second one. It was so tiny. It was probably 350 square feet, and
yeah.
making coffee there, and it was the best time of my life. It was it
Okay.
was great. Yeah.
So tell me what happens after you get the job as a dishwasher and how you progress and move through, other
So
restaurants.
first of all, I got the job, but not right away. I mean, it
Mm,
it took us a little while. For me, it took me at least 2 or 3 weeks to feel that past the shyness of speaking English, of trying to speak to people, talk to people in English, because I was very, very green. And but within 3 or 4 weeks, running out of money, we were really desperate to find a gig, and that's when I started there. If I tell you at the time, I know it's 1987, but I was making $125 a week,
mm,
and so it was. But I would get free food,
yeah.
and at night, I would prepare a sandwich for my friend. I mean, there were days that we only had a loaf of bread and butter and honey, but we did not complain. And but little by little, I had some connections from France that got me to meet someone who was, so all those guys that passed. It's so sad, but that guy that I met afterwards was a friend of a family friend, and he had a restaurant. He had a restaurant in Trump Tower, as a matter of fact. It was called
Ah,
Bistro, and his name was GP. We would call him GP, but And he wasn't able to hire me because everything was union and I didn't have papers. I mean, I didn't have like
Mm,
the social security. So he was like, look, I can't. But he was a very nice guy, very established, dating a model and this and that. And he took
yeah.
me under his wing. It was probably, I don't know, 12, 15 years older than me. And he would take me out at night to clubs. So I was living a life, even though I didn't have money, I was going to those beautiful clubs and this and that. And one night, so he was from Monte Carlo, so he was French Monegasque. But one night he takes me to that club, forgot the name. It was by the 59 Bridge or something. And there's that other French guy who runs the joint. He's, some kind of owner or managing partner. And he said, "Oh, well, yeah, we're gonna take care of you, this, that. Why don't you go to Le Bilboquet?" And I didn't know where it was.
Mm,
First of all, that was not really a neighborhood I was going to because it was the beginning of the Upper East Side. Bilboquet right now is on 60th, right off Madison. At the time, it was 63rd Street.
yeah.
And they tell me to go there. So I go there the next day. I make sure I put a nice, crisp white shirt and have slacks and what I had. It's relevant for the story because what I had a very nice pair of shoes, and I was in two shoes at the time, and it was really nice, and it was a double buckle English shoes, whatever. And I got there. I made sure I went there after lunch, or so I thought was finished. What was very funny with Bilboquet at the time, it was a tiny box that had no name on the awning. It was unlisted. It really, really was kind of a private club mentality,
Hmm.
and I didn't know all any of that. But when I passed the door, I thought that it was. So as I said, I thought it was not, if not close, finished. There were three or four tables. It was probably about 2:30 in the afternoon. And but as soon as I passed the door, I recognized two tables that were the corner tables. The space was done with the bar was in front of you, but tables were in front of it. And you have two banquets. There was, I don't know, 16 tables, I think. And I recognized on the left corner, which was the real big table, I recognized a famous Swedish model because she was a star in France at the time that I left France, and she was in
Uh-huh.
all. And I became friends with her over the years. But at the time, she was. I was like, wow, look at her. I'm like, wow, where am I? And then I see the other corner, and I'm a big tennis fan. I was a tennis player myself, not a big one. Otherwise, we would know that. But I recognized John McEnroe's parents, and
Huh.
and this is in a
Wow.
350 or 400 feet square feet restaurant, I'm in New York, and wow, and I'm like, right away I got a sense of where I am, that it's a special place.
Yeah.
So I won the job. I make $125 a week. I'm like, wow. And I asked for Philippe, the owner, who became my mentor and one of my best friends to this day. And he said, "Yeah, what is it? A little bit like, what you would imagine of a French restaurateur, a little bit like rugged, right?" And I said, "Well, I'm looking for Philippe. And what do you want?" I said, "Well, so and so told me to come here, maybe for a job. We have nothing." But as he's saying that, he said, "Come over here," like approach him, and then he looks at me from head to toe twice, and he sees my shoes. And he says, "Well, we have nothing, but can you bartend?" I'm like, "Sure." I didn't know anything. I mean, I was barely drunk at the time. And and he says, "Okay, come tomorrow, but I don't pay a lot. I pay $35." And I was like, "Sure." And that's how I got the job, the first job, more in the restaurant industry.
Wow.
That's how it happened. And I went the next day. I mean, it lasted only 3 days because, but then I was not really hired. But then someone said, "Oh, you should call this guy," and uh, and he eventually called me back. And 6 months later, I was the waiter manager there. So
Mm,
it was really, and I got into that business really because of him, because he's still alive. He's not that old, but he's a, I mean, incredible professional that passed me a passion, and the passion of hospitality. It all
yeah.
started there.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing the stories. I'm sure you have many and many of these with
Yeah,
also, Jean-Georges and
yeah,
Danielle and
yeah. Of course, I
and
work
so
for those
many of
guys.
these
Yeah.
great stories. But you know, tell me a bit about when you decided to break out on your own. And it's like, I need to start
It-
my own restaurant. I'm moving to Dallas. Walk me through that thought process.
so, it's all related to my wife.
Mm,
I'll be honest. So I did many things, but very early on, I realized that I wanted to stay. I mean, very early on, not maybe not, because at some point I became manager of other restaurants,
sure.
and then at some one time that I was the general manager of a restaurant, it didn't go so well. I was too green, and I decided to quit. So I did, and that's when I worked for Jean-Georges. And they offered me to become a manager many times there, but I was not interested. But I worked for 3 years for him, and I was blown away by the level of expertise and the level of, everything was done in a way that was, I mean, that's Jean-Georges, and
Yeah.
he's
Yeah. Yeah.
he's
Of
today
course.
because but it was kind of at the beginning, and I went to him. We were friendly. I mean, Daniel used to come to Bilboquet the Sundays when he was off, when he was the sous chef at Le Cirque, to get a steak tartare. So Jean-Georges, all of us, we kind of knew each other. Of course, I was not at the same level than those guys, but they were good guys, and they were, there was a French connection there. So
Yeah.
I knew Jean-Georges, and he had opened Jojo before his first restaurant, after his first own restaurant in New York. I was blown away by the food there. And then he opened Vong, which was his French Thai fusion. And he had opened not a long time ago. And then I went to ask for a job there, which I eventually got. At first, I didn't have anything, but anyway, I got it. And I worked there for 3 years. I got to tell you, the first 2 weeks I thought I was not going to make it, and I was a
Mm,
very, very good waiter. But all the ingredients, everything, I mean, you had to, as a captain, you had to have such knowledge.
yeah.
It's just a different world. And anyway, eventually I made it, and I stayed there for 3 years, and I, I don't know, I loved it, but I was not ready to be still a manager. And at the time, I went back to France, and I went back to France for about a year, but I missed New York. I lived a little bit in Central America, came back to New York, and started to work again at Bilboquet. And Philippe, my friend, kept on telling me, "Oh, let's do another Bilboquet, or do this or do that," but it was not happening. And at some point, I met my wife, who's very important today in my organization, by the way.
Yeah.
But at the time, she was finishing college as an art student, and she had no, she was more like, "Oh, what are you doing in a restaurant? Why are you a waiter? You could have been a lawyer. You're from Paris. When did you move here?" I mean, it was
Yeah.
funny, not in a mean way. But she was like, plus she had lived herself for about 6 years in Europe when she was young, and 4 years in Paris. She had that fantasy that she was going to marry a French guy and live in Paris. So
Hmm.
suddenly she met one, but he wanted to be a waiter, or a glorified waiter slash manager in a restaurant in New York. It
Sure.
didn't make sense to her.
Yeah.
And but because I fell so much in love with her and I wanted to be with her, I said, you know what? I need to build myself a life. I cannot depend on someone else. So I did open a restaurant at the time in New York, and but that was short-lived. It was right before September 11th,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, and the business did not take off, and you know, we moved together. We moved to Paris for a couple of years. I worked for Alain Ducasse over there, then came back to New York. Worked for 5 years as the GM for the Boathouse in Central Park, which was a
Okay.
very, very formative experience as well. And then I went to open as a partner a business in the meatpacking, and that was a sour partnership. Didn't work out, and I was not making any money. And I turned to my wife. I said, "Look, we need to get out of New York. It's too much." But by then I was already like 45, and
What do you mean it was too much? It's what does that
it's
mean?
it's a rat race. I think that New York, when you're in your 20s, you can live on the mattress, on the floor, and have the best life.
Sure.
Okay, and you're in your 30s, you start making a bit money, you go out, you live the life that you shouldn't, because you should save money. But you taking it to that rhythm where you think there's no tomorrow. You pass your 40s, if you have a wife, a kid, everything, it starts to be really difficult unless you make a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
And you
one
had
of
a
these
kid at
times.
this time.
We had a kid that was born in Paris.
Okay.
She's 22 now. So it was just not making any sense because I was making very good money, but not saving anything,
Yeah.
not even being able to go back to France on vacation, see my family. So I was like, what's the point? And I looked at her and I said, look, we got to get out of here. We got to go someplace else. She was not happy about it, but she knew that that was what we needed to do. And her mother is originally from Dallas, and
Mm,
but my wife never lived here. She lived there 6 months when she was very young because her dad passed away. But she was born in Mexico, Mexico City, from a Mexican dad, and but her mom was from here, and her mom had relocated here a year prior, and I'd been in Dallas. Quite a few times. My first time was in 2005. And the little side story there is that my office where I am, Bilboquet is right across, right? And about a block away, a block and a half, not even, there's a Starbucks where at the time it was like end of December between Christmas and New Year's, because the weather was so nice. We had been in that place that was like a very very old pharmacy, like drugstore, where they would make the sodas,
mm-hmm.
with the spoon and
Yeah. Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And we had a grilled cheese, whatever. There was memory lane for them. They used to go, the family with the grandparents, right? And I wanted a coffee. And being French, restaurateur, I'm a snob when it comes to coffee. Although many Americans have more snobbies than me now about their coffee. But there was a Starbucks across the street while they were, serving drip coffee where we were. I'm like, Starbucks will do. I need a double espresso. I
Sure.
don't. So we go there and we sat down and we were outside and we have pictures of that day. And I looked at my wife and said, it's really nice here. And she said, oh, I love it. I said, good, because I think we should move here. And she looks at me like I'm totally crazy. And and she goes, what are you talking about? Why do you like it so much here? And I said three or four random things like, well, the weather is nice, people are nice, it's clean, whatever, right? And she goes, you don't make any sense, right? Like maybe, but maybe you could have another kid. And I tried to push my case, and because I'm so tired of the
Mm,
first season I did at the boathouse, which was horrendous. It was so tough.
yeah.
And I said, and not knowing what to say, I said, well, I'm sure for business it could be great. And she looks at me and she say, what are you gonna do here? And I said, maybe open a little Bilboquet around here. It's a
Mm,
block away. And she looked at me and she said, you must be out of your fucking mind.
yeah.
But,
But you did.
and then I did. So that was 2005, opened in 2013. I did eight years later, but I had that vision that it could be the right place because, New York, hey, you're one of many. New York is one of the most incredible places because you have all that energy, all that creativity. People come from all over the states, but all over the world, and the melting pot creates that emulation.
Yeah.
But you're also one of so many, and I felt that in Dallas, I was going to be more unique,
Yep.
and it was going to be somehow easier. It's never easy, but easier, and I just needed a break.
Yeah. A bigger fish in a slightly smaller pond. Um,
Exactly.
so, uh, tell me about how you opened in Dallas and where you got the funds from, how you found the space. Talk to me
So,
about the details.
so look, I don't know who said, but I mean, that many people sometimes you see on podcasts or others that are very successful, and I like the ones that say the truth. And the
Yeah,
truth
well,
to
we want
me,
the truth.
it doesn't matter how intelligent, how bright, how gifted you are. If you don't get a break, that comes from luck. It is true in 99% of cases. Of course, you have some people, they're so brilliant, they don't need the luck. They're gonna attract the luck to themselves, right?
Sure.
But for most of the mortals, I think that you need some luck. And I got that luck. And that luck was a gentleman that became a very, very good friend of mine, that I didn't know at the time, but I had lunch at Bilboquet in New York next to two friends of mine. one of them being a painter artist, and I think that the couple from Dallas, they had been to galleries and they had books of galleries, so they started to engage in conversation, and they say, "Where are you from?" And say, "We're from Dallas," and they were somehow regulars of Bilboquet, like many people were over the years. Yeah, you have to realize that Bilboquet next June is going to celebrate 40 years of existence. So
Wow.
it's yeah,
I
it's
got to go
crazy.
visit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the new place is great, but the old one was
Sure.
magical.
Sure.
And I wish you had known that one. But so the tables were so close to each other, you were really rubbing shoulders with people, which is so funny because you had like the A-list of the world going there. But
Yeah.
and but you could, you a young guy and everything, not coming from anywhere, you could be part of it. It was more about like putting the right people together. He was really a master at that, Philippe. And so they say, "Oh, we're from Dallas." So they're like, "Oh, Stefan is opening Bilboquet in Dallas." Because they knew when I moved here, I asked Philip if he would let me open a Bilboquet here. And he was even supposed to be my partner. He said, "Yeah, Dallas is great." He had never set foot in Dallas. That is crazy. And so they, Gil, my friend, his name is Gil Bissing, uh, turns to Philippe, say, "You're opening in Dallas." And Philippe like, "Yeah, yeah, it's done, whatever, doesn't even, "Oh, well, that's where we're from. And I know you certainly don't want any partners or this, that, but if you need some help, I'm in real
Mm.
estate,"
Mm.
in a very humble way, because people down here, it's very different with New York, right? New York, you're going to meet people that right away
It's
want
more
to tell you
boastful.
how important they are. And,
Yeah.
sometimes they are, but sometimes there's a lot of talk there. Yeah, in Dallas, people are probably a little bit more, if not humble, I mean, more reserved about that, but they're very, very welcoming and they really want to help. They're genuine about that. And, Philip did not even, I mean, he said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, we're opening." And he went on to do something else. He did not sit with the guy, did not get his phone number. But my friend that was sitting next to them did.
Yeah.
And a couple of days later, I'm meeting with him, and he's the one that helped me put a group of investors. And
Incredible.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, he's been extremely helpful and influential, and that's how it happened. So
Yeah.
I found a small group of people that, and they were not in for the money. That's what is interesting. They were in for bringing something to the community. Dallas 14 years ago when I moved here was, I mean, look, it was already the fifth or sixth largest city in America and a very, very strong economy. But there was not a lot going on. I mean, lately, lots of groups from New York, from LA, from everywhere are coming here. But at the time, it wasn't the case. So
Yeah.
to have Bill Bouquet, which for a certain type of crowd, was a big name, even though there was only one. It was small in New York. It was relevant,
Yeah.
and they were excited about it.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, another investor of mine who also became a friend, he and his wife, they lived in New York, but not together. She worked at the time, I think, for J.P. Morgan, and she used to go to Bilboquet in New York.
Mm.
Because she was in her 20s and living the life and everything. And once she got married to that other gentleman, they used to go to the space that is Bilboquet now used to be a restaurant. There was also a French restaurant. It
Mm.
was very old, and the crowd was already in the 70s and everything. But they loved the French food, so they would go there. And she kept telling him that, "Oh, this would be perfect for Bilboquet." So
Mm.
there was really, it
Yeah.
was kind of in the stars.
Yeah. No, I want
So
to dive.
look,
Yeah. No, no, thank you for sharing. I want to dive into this later because I have noticed this trend, I think probably in the 2010s, where you're bringing New York-esque quality restaurants to other places and doing really well, like yourself. And we had a guest on a few weeks ago, Ben Burr, bringing like a butcher-style steakhouse to Houston and has also done really well. So it does seem smart. And I'd be curious to hear what you think the next trend is and riding that curve up. But before we do and get into that, how much investment did you have to raise for Bilboquet in
Bilbo,
Houston?
Bilboquet was actually pretty cheap. It was less than $1 million at the time, but it was
Okay.
also a small restaurant. 18, I mean, shy of 2,000 square feet plus a little side patio that we covered and where
Okay.
we brought the HVAC. So it's a total today of probably 23 or 2,400 square feet. So it's a small space,
Yeah.
but so it was and it was before COVID, so the prices were more
Sure.
normal than they are today. Yeah.
Okay. So how did the first year go after opening, or were there any
So
hiccups with opening?
yes, there were. There's always hiccups. So at the time, you know, what happened also is that I was not fully involved at first. Let me explain why. I came from New York, not making any money for about a year. So I came, I had lots of debts, that fortunately I paid off over the years. But I was in a situation that was difficult, and I found a job here because it took me about a year and a half to open from the time that we arrived to Dallas to the time that we opened. And because I didn't find a location right away, I found someone that was going to help me do
Mm,
so, and he was tremendous in achieving that. But he couldn't start right off. And I found a job as a consultant that became a job of director of operation for F&B for a big real estate guy that had many buildings, this that, and it was a
okay.
good paying job, and yeah, it gave us stability and my wife, when I signed the lease of Bilboquet, she was very scared because I was coming out of an experience where it didn't work, and she said, okay, you can do it, but I want you to do it with a partner, and I don't want you to leave your job. So suddenly, I had to manage to open what was my dream because I wanted really to be my own, boss and when you're an entrepreneur, that's all you think about.
Yeah.
It's not about the money. It's a certain form of freedom, even though you realize that you work so much.
You
But
work
you
more.
have,
You work more.
yeah, exactly. But you have that urge of really making your own decisions and going and choosing, yeah, choosing your path. So I brought on someone who was a very good friend of mine and that I'd worked in New York for many, many years, but that knew from high school in Paris, believe it or not. So we had very parallel paths all our lives. We were not best friends in high school, but once we realized that we were both in New York, we became friends.
Sure.
And I offered him to come and be my partner. That did not work well. And he had things that happened in his private life with his um, girlfriend at the time, but that became the mother of his child that couldn't renew her visa and this and that.
I see.
It's just that his implication in the business was not the best, and but also he came with the wrong, not just attitude, but he did not adjust well to what Dallas is. And even though I had told him, I said, "Look, you got to be extremely humble coming here. It's not New York, it's not Paris, and you're from Paris, and you're a New York restaurateur. So you're gonna have to leave that off completely. And when you think being that you're being humble, it's gonna be even more than that."
Yeah.
Because otherwise, people are gonna tap you on the back, say, "Yeah, yeah, that's great," and then they're never gonna come back. And he said, "Yeah, yeah, of course, of course, of course." He did all the opposite. He was so difficult with people. I mean, someone would ask him for. He was rude, and he was. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there was an example. I couldn't believe he said that, but where someone asked for a black napkin, and he said, "Well, this is not a Chinese restaurant," and I'm
Mm,
like, "But," I said, "Laurent, how can you say those things?
mm,
This is just wrong, and this is like." So I realized that he was going to run the business to the ground,
yeah.
and I got rid of him. But we had to rebuild. And as a matter of fact, you know, we when I took over, I still had my job, but I told the staff, I said, "Look, I'm so sorry because I made a wrong choice, putting the wrong person here. And there's going to be a big shift because this place has been, from what I understand now, has been the house of no. People wanted a black napkin. People wanted to switch their garnish. People wanted to sit at a different table. Everything was so strict and, like we're, making them, doing them a favor. to
Yeah.
dine with us.
Yeah.
And I say, this place has been the house of no, and today it's going to become the house of yes, because that's what hospitality is about.
Okay.
And if there's something you cannot do for the guest, they have to perceive it as, well, it's really impossible, but that it breaks your heart not to be able to deliver. And we switch, and it was very hard because 6 months into having open, also the winter was very hard. Was one of the first, you know, uh, very cold winter that lasted in Dallas, which is not frequent, but that's has since happened more than not. And we it's a small restaurant, but there were nights, Monday night or Tuesday night, where the restaurant was empty, like eight
Yeah.
covers,
Yeah.
and so we had to rebuild it. And my motto is always one day at a time, one customer at a time,
Yeah.
and that's what we did.
Okay.
You know,
Can you talk a little bit about the numbers of, how much was the
yeah.
restaurant bringing in? Were
So
you
it's
guys
it
profitable? What are the margins?
So we first year we made what I projected, which was, not a lot. It was $2.4 million,
Okay.
and we kind of broke even. Um, you know, Today is a little bit difficult to establish, because we have a major construction that has been going on
Mm.
right in front. I don't know if you know about that, but it's a Michael Dell project with a auberge hotel and condominiums, and there's three huge towers. So
Oh,
the
that's going to
name
be great
the
for the restaurant then.
it's going to be amazing, but the past 2 years have been extremely challenging. With
Yeah.
at a time there were 350 trucks coming in and out all day long. Yeah,
Oh
to
man.
remove the gravel. No, it was a disaster. The dust, the this. So there's a lot of people that have kind of put a cross right now on this block, and three of our restaurants are right there. So it's
Yeah.
been tough. But to give you an idea, so first year we 2.4. I think we went second year 2.7, and 3.2 and 3.8. So we kept on growing
Yeah.
to a point that, until 3 years ago, we were in the $6 million range.
Wow.
So within 10 years, it's phenomenal. And so it's been, now this year is a different
Sure.
story.
Sure.
But maybe we'll go back. It's just that, and now today also it's going to be 13 years in May that we've opened. So we really established.
Yes.
We brought more restaurants also, so we're a small group, but I think that we brought something that was different, and that resonated with a lot of people. So we're not in a bad place. It's
Yeah.
just that that construction has to be over. It's going to be over in about 6 months, and
Sure. Seems temporary.
yeah,
So I know Bilboquet was your first one, but you also have,
yeah,
I believe, four other different concepts that are kind
yeah,
of clustered around the same area, loosely with
correct.
the French tilt
Yeah,
cuisine
yeah. So
style.
so yeah, it's interesting because once Bilboquet became uh, became really successful, I was approached by many developers and real estate people to do another build bouquet elsewhere, Houston and North Dallas, like Legacy and this and that. Um, but first, Bilboquet is not my brand. Philippe chose finally to license it to me. He was himself relocating his old Bilboquet, so it became too much for him.
Yeah.
So we stayed very close. I think he helped him in some way, because to have at some point we were the only one open because he had to close his. Uh, and so it also showed him that he could branch out
Yep.
elsewhere, which maybe he wasn't so sure of, for some time. But again, it wasn't my brand. It wasn't my decision to add a right of first refusal on all of Texas. But there was that, and there was also the fact that I was a bit reluctant to take my eyes off the ball, and thinking that, you have a restaurant that works well. Okay, it might work very well for 2 or 3 years, and then suddenly there are things that happen. You have someone that opens around the corner that takes some of your business because they do something that is comparable or similar or better.
Yeah.
And how do you react to that? So when you open a restaurant in another city, it's not that easy.
You're saying it's
And for
harder to manage remotely.
of course,
Yes,
it
for
is
sure.
way harder. And so at some point, my friend Gil, the one that really helped me here, said, you know, because I shared with him those concerns, and I was like, look, I would love to grow, and I have people with me that, you know, also going to need to make more money. You know, my right-hand guy, who's a managing partner, Edward, was with me since day one. He came as a waiter, you know, captain, lead waiter, but he became the manager very, very quickly, and now he's the director of operation. This is a guy that has been with me for 13 years, and
Yeah,
in the meantime, he built a family with his girlfriend at the time, now wife, with three kids that go to some of them go to private school, and this and that. You know, people around you, you have to make sure that they can also have a good life.
yes,
You know, so I was like, hey, it would be good if I can do something else. And he said, you know what? Do something in the same neighborhood. And then a space a block away became available, and that was at the time we called it Up on Knox, and I'll get back to that. But now it's called Knox Bistro, and it's a block away. And this so Bilboquet was 2013, the other one was 2016, and later on, in between those two, so in the same building that I have Bilboquet, we opened Georgie, and that was
Georgie,
late 2019.
19. Yep.
And about a year ago, we opened two concepts. It's one entity, but two concepts that are just three blocks down, one street off. And that street is on what's called the Katy Trail. It's a little bit like the High Line in New York. It
Okay.
used to be a railroad that
Yep.
has been about 40 years ago now transformed into a beautiful promenade where everyone jogs and this and that. And we have two concepts there. One is called Le Passage. It's a French Asian restaurant. Another one is Rose Cafe, which is more French. Vietnamese, Cambodian. Our chef there is from Cambodian origin. And most recently, back in late June, we opened one in a different neighborhood, not very far, 10 minutes drive. It's called Frenchy.
Yeah.
So we have seven
Different
concepts. We also
concepts.
have a little thing there, but five entities. Um, but the thread of the French happened because of Up on Knox. When we opened Up on Knox, so it's a block away, right? But the other block, there's another restaurant from a fellow restaurateur who I know was a friend. It's called Toulouse, and the landlord of the time, not my landlord at Bilboquet, but the landlord of the new space was also the landlord of Toulouse, and we're just very, very afraid that we would cannibalize the business by having three French restaurants
Yeah.
within two blocks. And I said, okay, I not that I agree with that, because you go to France, you can have 15 French restaurants and they all, but maybe there's more French people there, right? And I said, okay, I understand. And I came up with a different concept that was called Up on Knox. It was more of a Texas brasserie. We had, you know, the oyster platter, and we had I mean, we had two very talented chefs. One was Korean American, and his wife from here, from Dallas. He was from Boston, she was from here, but they had come from very good restaurant in LA. So that was that couple that worked, and but that did not work out. And
Hmm.
I realized for a couple of reasons. One was that the neighborhood was not yet ready to embrace something that was, I don't know, a bit more edgy than what they were used to. You know, like you go to the East Village in New York, you do LA, you know, even Miami, you know, th those cities always had a very, very creative emulation, you know, in
Sure.
restaurants. The neighborhood we are in, you know, it's right next, it's a block away from the most affluent neighborhood in Dallas, which is called Highland Park. It's very similar to Beverly Hills in LA. It was the
Okay.
same
Got it.
architects that designed it. So, you know, I would say that, you know, people are a bit more conservative. And when it comes to food, you know, they're also a little bit less adventurous.
I see.
And this neighborhood is changing because now it's changing, but at the time it was a little bit hard. You needed them to really be your loyal base, and we felt to just resonate with them. And but also the other thing was that I realized that me being French and coming now with Bilboquet, uh, people expected something else from me. And it's
Mm,
very interesting because, you open restaurants, like anything you do, when you create something, you have your own ideas and you have your vision. And at the end, it's the customer that decides what it should be or not. And sometimes you nail it, but most of the time you have to adjust it to whoever has become your clientele and who's ready to support you. And you have to listen to them. And right after COVID, I partnered with a French chef, Bruno Davaillon, who's very, very important to me today, who's also a partner. And we decided to transition from Up on Knox to Knox Bistro and reinforce the French identity. Luckily enough, the decor was already very French brasserie, so we just
mhm.
added more lamps and mirrors and stuff. But there was no, it was really about the food and to go into a direction that is very different from Bilboquet. There's not one dish in common. But we realized that I realized that that's what people were expecting from me, and sales started to go up, and people started to rediscover it and say, "Well, you know what? We love it. We put tablecloth. We it's always it's I like to say that besides selling food, good wine, good service, I'm in the business of perception.
Mm.
It's how people, it's the perception that they have of what you do and what you should be doing that makes you successful or not. And yeah, you have to respect that
You're saying you have to match the perception?
as much as you can. Of
Mm.
course, you have to keep your integrity.
Yeah.
Like most recently, we have a new young chef, Armand, very talented. He worked for us a few years back. His mother is American from San Antonio, but his dad is French, and he was back in Paris for 4 years. Came back, we decided to put a foie gras, on the menu. Uh, it's it can be controversial, but still, we love it. And I read in the report that the manager sent every night, that the person that say, oh, they say the foie gras, the taste was good, but it was too hard. They should be soft and this and that. And we talked about it with him and Bruno, my partner, yesterday. And I was like, look, he said, what do you want me to do? I said, I don't want you to do anything. Your foie gras is one of the best I ever had in my life.
Mm.
So sometimes you have to choose to educate people. But I
Yep.
said, but the way to do it, you don't want to lecture the customer once he has, brought up like a criticism. But what you can do is that we can teach our waiters, our managers, you know, exactly why the foie gras is like that.
Yeah.
Why, because a foie gras, I don't know if you like foie gras yourself, foie gras terrine, it has to come out from the fridge because and cold because it as it warms up, it's going
It'll
to become
melt.
it will melt too much if you don't serve it like that.
Yeah.
It's not a mousse. It
Yeah.
doesn't have the same ingredients, so you know it. And
Yes.
so sometimes, criticism you have to accept and evolve. Sometimes you just have to listen to them and choose a way to address them.
Yeah. Is this because I read somewhere that you had this philosophy that the customer is not always right? Is
Correct.
that part of this philosophy that we're talking
It
about?
is, it is, but it doesn't mean that you have to rub it in their face.
Mm.
You have to be respectful. They made a clear choice and decision to come to your house. They
Yeah.
pass the door. There are many choices. You have to respect that at the highest level.
Yes.
And so, in that sense, it's counterintuitive to say the customer is not always right. But you have to find ways without being rude or without being dismissive. You have to find ways to, yeah, to keep your integrity and to make sure that you don't, Otherwise, you're gonna go crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it's not it's not doable. I mean, it's not manageable.
Yeah.
But there are ways to do that, you know.
Sure.
And you know, I think that most of the time, you know, as guests, we enter a restaurant, and within a very short time, we decide, subconsciously or not, if this is the right place for us or not. It's almost sensorial, you know. It's like the lighting, the music, the way you've been greeted. You know,
Yeah.
you have many restaurants, especially in New York, right, where they can say you have a reservation. That's the first thing they tell you before telling you good evening, thank you for coming. You know, you're like, you know, is it for me? Of course, it doesn't mean that you're not gonna have a good time. Maybe you can have a great waiter, the great food, but if not everything is up to par, up to your expectations, you're gonna be like, that wasn't the right place for me.
Yeah. For
So
sure.
yeah,
Um, Stefan, I know we're running up on time here, but I'm curious, where do you see the restaurant landscape evolving now
in
from
in
where it is?
Dallas,
Yeah,
in
in Dallas, I guess based on your experience, or maybe elsewhere, for maybe listeners who are interested in opening a restaurant, or do you have any overarching themes of the restaurant industry?
yeah, for sure. I look at the trends. I think there are some right now that are very strong. You have a lot of solo diners. You have a lot of people that want to eat at bars,
Mm,
at
yeah,
counters, when it
yeah,
wasn't the case 15 years ago. So if you open a restaurant today, you have to think of those things. Have big bars, have places where people can converge and feel that they're part of something. You know, interestingly enough, Bilboquet didn't have the room to put a bar. It's just a service bar, but it still works. But these things are important. I would say, you know, what really one of the big things that made me succeed here was the rent. You know, you have something in Texas, in Dallas, but in Texas in general, that is very uncommon in the rest of the states, which is that you have a base rent that is pretty low, and then you have a percentage rent above what they call a natural breakpoint. The way it works is that, you know, maybe you're going to spend right now in the neighborhood, you're going to be probably at $90 a square foot, okay?
okay,
Which, you know, New York, you probably a good space, you're at like 250 or 300, or maybe, you
sure,
know, maybe more. And and but on top of that you pay what's called triple net, you know, it's insurance, cam, this, that. So it brings you probably from 90, it's going to bring you to 110 or 120. Eventually, if you make really, if you're very successful, you're going to pay a percentage, that the delta on the percentage, which is 6%. That's common. And that's going to bring you, instead of being 120, maybe you're going to be at 150. But it's still going to be much less than if you had a base rent that was already set
yeah,
there. So in other words, the landlords tend to try to work with you on giving you the ability to grow your business the first 2 or 3 years. So, you know, there's one thing we always say in New York for restaurants is location, location, location. This is absolutely true everywhere. But the other thing is the rent. And sometimes you just so passionate and so eager to do well that you're a bit dismissive of that. Dallas, is, rents are going up, so it's not the same market that it was 10 or 12 years ago, because you have big groups that have come from elsewhere.
sure,
They also, it's a little bit of a problem, because I would tell you why. Because it's raising the labor cost, because everyone is fighting now for the same people, you know. And me, I've always made the choice to pay my guys, you know, as much as I could and pretty well, you know. And I give vacation to people, I give health insurance, you know. I'm trying to really make sure that they have something they can rely on. But you know, a prep cook you used to pay probably at the time $13 or $14. Now it's tough to find one less than $20. A line cook is tough to find one less than $25. So
mm,
all that makes everything much more challenging than before,
yeah,
because you have big groups coming from everywhere, and right now that's the trend. That's the trend in Dallas. Big restaurant, very that somehow that a bit I don't know, a bit like Las Vegas type of, you know, restaurant
very
world.
sceney,
Very scenic, exactly, that's the right word. I'm not sure that Dallas is so much a town that wants that. They want that to a certain extent, but I'm also not sure that it's a town that can support that. It's growing very fast, but I think there's more restaurants and more apartments growing. I mean, it goes faster on that side than the real people coming in.
Yeah,
So,
interesting.
and the past year, I know because we'll talk, between us, the business has been down for 90% of the restaurant here. So
Yeah,
it's we had a very interesting but very intriguing crossroads, I think, in terms of the restaurant world here. So I don't know. I would say this. I would say if that's your passion, if you want to open a restaurant, you open something small that you can control every
yeah,
day because that's the way I started with Bilboquet.
yeah,
I was there every day, and you try to keep your expenses as low as possible, uh, and wait and see. But it's going to be interesting. The next 2 years are going to be probably challenging for a lot of people.
yeah. No, I think that's very astute advice because rent is your biggest fixed cost that's ongoing. You can
Yeah,
maybe flex all the other things up and down, but not your rent. So,
absolutely.
um, awesome. Well, Stefan, this has been really awesome. The last question I want to ask you is, looking back on your journey over the last, call it 30, 40 years, um, with 2020 hindsight, is there anything you would have changed if you could go back and start all over again?
I'd love to say no, but no, there's a lot of things that would have changed.
Good. Good. Let's hear it.
Uh, you know, look, I think that if I could have had uh, from the beginning someone from a culinary standpoint that was going to be the guarantor of the direction, I would have loved that. I was just not able to find one. Now I do. Now I do have one, and I think it's so important to have someone that the relationship between restaurateur, front of the house restaurateur, or entrepreneur, and chefs are always difficult. It's two different visions most of the time that you have to unify.
Yeah.
One doesn't work without the other, so we all have to make compromises. It's a marriage, and it's great when you can find someone that has pushed his ego aside, that is just in connection with you on the financial, s- you know, side of like saying, hey, we need people that are going to pass the door to be happy with what we do. How do we make sure that it happens? Because that's how we're going to be successful. That's how we're going to be able to pay everyone. That's how we're going to be able to have an extra sous chef or an extra pastry chef, or or an extra manager, so that we keep on growing. And that's the main difficulty in growing. If you have one restaurant, somehow it's easy. When you have three, four, or five, you need your pendant. And I think that, you know, I mean, right now I found him, but it took me a while.
Mm.
And it's interesting because a French guy, he went on his own at some point and this and that. And that saves the day at the end, and it's probably easier when you are a chef owner, like a type of Jean-Georges or Daniel, that when you are on the other side of the spectrum. So that's the one thing I would, before before really growing, I would try to find someone that I can rely on. That would be that guy for me, because to change chefs is difficult. It has happened to us quite a bit. Most recently, now Georgie, and finally it's Bruno, my chef partner, that's going to take the helm, and that brings you stability, that brings you consistency, and that's the one thing. At the end, we're still cooking, it's still food.
Yeah.
So,
That's the
you
product.
know,
That's the business.
uh,
Yeah.
that's the product you're selling food. People don't come because you have this wine or that alcohol. They come for the food. It all comes down to that. But of course, everything else had its share of importance. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Stefan, that's very I think that's great advice for people who are interested in opening restaurants, if they are not a chef themselves. So,
Yeah.
um, great. If people want to follow along the journey and learn more and reach out, what's the best way for them to do so?
Say that again. If they want to follow which journey, they just
Your
to
journey,
do.
Travis Street Hospitality.
Oh,
Where can they
choices
follow you
belly.
on the
We
socials?
we
And
yeah, so we have we on Instagram like everyone else for each other restaurant and for Travis Street Hospitality as well. We have websites Travis Street Hospitality .com and Bilboquet Dallas.com and Georgie Dallas
okay,
Knox and so forth. So that's where you find us um, if you search in your search engine Travis Street Hospitality, you're gonna find us. By the way, that's where the name comes from, where it started.
yeah,
The three first restaurants on Travis. So you knew that, but and that's why we chose that. Yeah, they can find us there easily. And
great.
I hope you, Alan, you have the chance to come and visit in Dallas. Have
Yeah,
you ever been here?
I don't think I've been to Dallas yet, but I'll
You
need to
you're a New
come.
Yorker originally. You were born in New York?
I was born in Atlanta,
In
Georgia.
Atlanta, okay.
Yeah.
Well, interesting because there's a Bilboquet in Atlanta. I
Oh,
don't know
there
if you
is
know
now.
that.
Oh, I
Yeah. Oh,
didn't.
it was actually the third after New York, Dallas, Atlanta opened. So they've been open for
Okay.
probably 10 years. In that posh area where you have all the nice shops and everything. I don't know what you call it. Uh,
Krog District.
no, no, no. Is it Highland Village or something? Highland
Uh,
Village?
it's been a
Yeah, the
while since I've been.
restoration hardware and the Hermes and this, I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's one there, and there's a strong connection between Atlanta and Dallas. Lots of business between the two.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, yeah, yeah. I see a lot of people coming from there.
Well, I'll probably
But
have to stop by the New York one first, then I'll maybe visit Dallas, and then I'll go to
yeah,
Atlanta.
yeah, yeah. Let me know, and I'll
I
put you in
will,
touch with someone over there.
for sure. Awesome.
All
All
right.
right. Well, thanks
Well,
again,
thank you
Stefan.
very much.
Of
Thank you,
course.
Alan. Pleasure. Thank you. Take care.